everything. Like, right? What's in a name?
So,
Well, speaking of cultures,
Oh, glad you weren't going to say speaking of what we were just saying. Speaking of cultures,
so is cancel culture a real culture?
that is actually, I mentioned online on Twitter and Facebook that we were going to be getting into this stuff. And let me bring up at Spinning By on Twitter. So there's no such thing as cancel culture. And then added a lot of thoughts to that. Salem Renee Gonzalez, who happens to be the first student to graduate with a minor in comic studies from Henderson State University, where I'm a professor.
Wow.
Cancel culture or consequence culture? And then Spinning By said, well, why do you have to call it culture? Okay. Well, because people haven't canceled things they didn't like before. People haven't protested records, music, albums,
Not like anybody
books.
went and burned their bras before or anything like that.
It's I never really thought of that the same as the book burnings and the record burnings.
I'm
I
happy
kept
to
my
say
books in
more.
my bras.
Oh, there we go.
do you keep your books in your bras?
It's padding.
When the Dixie Chicks made some comments during
Oh yeah.
first during a former president, an early 21st century president's time, suddenly their fans were riled up over them, at arms and angry about them. And others along the way have been hurt for different reasons. But I want to get more into the specifics of the content, the creative works being canceled. Let me throw in a few others on just the issue of cancel culture itself, whether it's real. Someone says cancel culture is similar to what was called political correctness a few decades ago. And we have the same types of people bemoaning the PC beliefs. That was Bob Brittal on Facebook making this comment. It's something that cycles around when people evolve and start to realize that something we didn't blink an eye at years ago was actually pretty bad. And he has more thoughts on these. Your thoughts? What do we even call cancel culture? All of you.
It's not so much that it's cancel culture, it's that marginalized communities are finding through the works of activists, through the natural growth and, to use the word again, evolution of a culture, marginalized voices are being heard more and more, especially through the internet. This vast array of thoughts and beliefs and values and worldviews we're all being exposed to. So is it really, this is a generation that no longer thinks the way we do? Or is it, these are people who've always thought this way, but now they're actually being heard. Now they actually have a platform. Take, for example, the Pepé Le Pew controversy. Space Jam 2 decided to take him out of...
and they've explicitly said they have absolutely no plans to use that character.
Absolutely.
It's not just about Space Jam 2. Okay.
Yes. In fact, in the scene in Space Jam 2, I believe the deleted scene was called for a female protagonist basically slapping him and saying, "You can't stalk women that way," and they took that out. I've talked to a couple friends who are women about him, and every single person said, "Yeah, watching those cartoons always made me feel uncomfortable." A couple men that I've talked to felt discomfort. I've seen discomfort. I've seen discomfort on Twitter, on Facebook, about the character. Was he funny? Okay, cool. Maybe when I was a kid, but what makes him funny? He's a French stereotype, so he talks in a weird way to American ears, and he chases a cat with a stripe, thinking it's a female partner, and that he's entitled to a female partner. And it just doesn't seem, to an examined audience, it doesn't, the humor's not there. It's very shallow humor, in my opinion.
Yeah, Andrew DeLoach on Facebook asked, what about Pepe Le Pew teaching young boys that it's charming or cute not to accept no for an answer from women?
Or hilarious.
So let's talk skunk.
at the time, I think it was something that made a lot of sense, right? And I don't think anything about progressivism, or I don't really think anything is that linear. I think as humans, we really try to make things very linear, but they are not. They don't actually function that way, right? So I saw this movie, Born in East LA, and with Cheech Marin of Cheech and Chong fame. And so progressive about drugs, progressive about politics, progressive about immigration, right? This movie was like fantastic, and really held up until there's this one scene, right, where he pretends to wear glasses and be blind so that he can kind of feel up women who are passersby. And I just had this like, oh no, this was so progressive and did so well. And I was so on board until, right? And then this one scene kind of ruined that for me. And I had to take a long time to kind of think through. I'm rewatching this movie for the very first time. And at the time it was 2019. And so, yeah, for 2019, that scene ruined that movie. A 2019 editor would have known we do not do that anymore and to take that out, right? For that time, that was normalized behavior, made complete sense, fit in the context, and was there, right? Did people have thoughts about that back then? Absolutely, but they were in the minority. The only thing that's changed now is more people have a voice to speak out against the fact that that was not okay behavior. Why? Because we've had several movements, Me Too included, right, which shifted the narrative, which shifted that conversation, which empowered people to talk out against this kind of behavior. People view that change as canceling. It's not canceling, it is just growing and evolving and shifting forward. I think that the rate of change is what's making people so uncomfortable. And I think that's why we have this backlash now against cancel culture, right? Is the rate of change is going too fast for people. I have not figured out what was wrong with this one thing that you told me was not great last week. Now you're saying these other things are bad too. And I think that's the threat that people feel.
I've never thought about it that way.
That skunk always creeped me out. Of course, none of us were around in the 50s when he got going on. I wonder if it would have been different if the cat had spoken. The cat never spoke. Maybe it's because the skunk did not speak cat, and her lack of being able to do more than just run from the creep. Maybe that had an effect on people being able to focus on him. Although when there was turnaround against him at the end, people would pull for that cat and go, he deserved to, when it was some kind of actual consequence. There was one or two where something happens and the cat is falling for him at the end, and that creeped me out even more.
Oh yeah, because then there were a couple where he would get his white stripe painted.
Yes. At least one. He got his stripe painted black, and the cat went after him, and it scared him. The turnabout was not fair play from his point of view, and he ran from it.
I do want to touch on the Twitter question about what we're teaching our kids. And I'm seeing a lot of discourse about, oh, you're getting your morals from a cartoon and this and that. And of course, there's arguments on both sides.
Don't we all learn a lot of our earliest morals from things like cartoons?
The Bobo doll experiment. Classic experiment that you read about in Psych 101. Long story short, for any of the viewers who don't know it, kids watched an adult in a room with one of those bouncy Bobo dolls. When the adult was nice to the Bobo doll, the kid was nice to the Bobo doll. When the adult would kick the Bobo doll, punch the Bobo doll, throw the Bobo doll, the kid would do the same thing with no prompting. And they took it one step further, and they had the adult use weapons. And the kids generalized that to where they used other toys in the experiment room as weapons. So now we're getting into, young boys are watching this, finding it hilarious. They're watching their parents laugh at this. They're watching their friends laugh at this. It's reinforcing that behavior. But it's also sending a message to women. Like you mentioned, the cat was always silent. The cat would always try to run away. The only option was escape. There was no confrontation. There was no boundary setting. It was just run away because that's all you can do.
One person weighs in with save Mr. Potato Head, but I actually think that's a little off topic because Potato Head still exists.
And so, yes, part of the thing that confuses me personally about cancel culture is the fact that, like, nothing is actually canceled. Nobody canceled anything. All the people who own the Dr. Seuss books still have the Dr. Seuss books. They're not recalling them. You don't have to give them back. And same thing with Pepe Le Pew. Like, those cartoons still exist. We're not just putting him in new things, right? And Mr. Potato Head was Mr. Potato Head. And if you have that original shiny box, great. He still gets to be Mr. Potato Head for you. But the new boxes are just going to say Potato Head. You get to have your own fun fantasy of determining, is this potato a potato? Is this potato a man, a woman, something in between? Great. And you can figure that out for yourself. So what is being canceled? Like, most of the time when people rage about something being canceled, I just want to know, what is the particular thing you feel like you're missing out on right now? What is the thing that is going away that we have to sit and mourn together? Right? What is the loss you are discussing?
Well, censorship. You're taking away my freedom to speech. No, we're not. You're not getting jailed for owning a Dr. Seuss book. No one's going to prison. And, you know, newsflash, if your Mr. Potato Head had the accessory that clearly defined him as a mister, that might be a knockoff, because I'm pretty sure they didn't come with sets of genitals.
People are conflating things with identity, right? I think that's like another kind of issue where Pepe Le Pew becomes an extension of like, oh, this is not just an attack on like something like a trait, but it's an attack on me as an entire person with an entire system of values, and that system of values is disappearing. First of all, the very sad reality is like, no, like, cancel culture being defined as a culture or a problem or anything like that is that it's so attached to identity politics. It feels a lot like a term that's buzzy and a way to talk about feeling disgruntled, or it's just another iteration of like what you were talking about, Dr. Langley or Travis.
Yeah, we don't normally call each other by titles around.
Okay, cool. But
welcome to our party, Sam.
Thank you. We go back to this kind of thing where like this has existed for forever. Like I'm a Shakespeare person, and like people cancel theater all the time. Like people cancel Shakespeare all of the time, over and over and over again.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that it's people feel like it's an attack on identity, because it's also an attack on nostalgia. We internalize so strongly with the things from our childhood because they helped develop us. So if I've been believing something since I was a kid, and there are things my family loved and things my parents loved, I have memories of playing with Mr. Potato Head, memories of watching Pepe Le Pew with my family, and we laughed. And now all of a sudden you're attacking that. You're attacking my nostalgia. You're attacking my memories. You're attacking me.
Emotionally, it feels like that. And I think that is the most important part of this whole conversation that we're going to have, Billy, is that, right? That it feels like you are canceling me when you say that the thing that I love or loved is not okay. And that is the like cultural nuance that I wish we could all get to, right? Because I think that's the issue that people don't see, right? Is when we cancel Mr. Potato Head, we are not canceling your right to define your own gender, right? We're just saying the potato no longer has a gender. That's all we're saying.
Like
and if
potatoes ever did.
Right? If you want to buy the potato and then bring the potato home, say, you know what, this particular potato, like factory item number 987654, this potato feels like a man, great. Then that is your private, personal Mr. Potato Head.
Why did the Seuss organization announce, instead of just quietly putting 6 books out of print, why did they announce this?
There's like now a huge interest in Dr. Seuss, and like Dr. Seuss copies are flying off the shelf. There are like memes going around, you know, like stores.
And the books that are not being pulled out, like the sales that went up are the books that are not even in question.
Like,
wow, that's more cynical than anything I had in mind.
Well, and that's kind of the panic part of it, right? There will be a long, long article posted on social media explaining the nuance and the detail and giving facts of what's actually happening. But people will read that 1 to 2 sentence snippet and fill in the blanks on their own based on their own biases. You know, oh, well, Dr. Seuss is getting pulled off the shelf for racist things. Oh, well, these people think everything is racist. No, there were depictions of other ethnicities that shouldn't probably be out there in today's modern society.
It just doesn't make sense anymore, right? And most of the people who are griping so much, like, have you seen the actual pages? Because we're not canceling all Dr. Seuss books. Have you seen the specific pages of the specific books that are being pulled off the shelves? Okay, great. And then can you attest that you truly think that that should still exist? Then I'm interested in having a conversation, right? But people who are just upset about Dr. Seuss being done, like, no one's taking Dr. Seuss away.
The comfort of ignorance is much easier than the discomfort of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Salem Gonzalez on Facebook, I mentioned earlier, has also weighed in with people can change and atone and realize they did wrong. Seuss, parentheses, Geisel did. Some never do. Lovecraft. Lovecraft was very racist.
Right.
I love the fact that Lovecraft Country takes his stuff and really does a spin on that.
Aggressively turns it on its head.
And some of this comes to an issue of separating creation and creator. And we're mainly talking about the creations themselves here. 1 billion I mentioned when we were talking about doing this topic, we brought up Apu. This is our friend Ali Matu in a panel he did for Wizard World recently was talking about how Apu was just a curse for him when he was growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So also as a South Asian, I always had this like mixed feeling about it, right? Like on the one hand, you know what an Indian is. That's amazing, right? Like, cool. You at least have that much of a context for something that, for my existence. You have this much of a context for my existence, right? And then on the other hand, when we're done talking, you say thank you, come again in an accent that you're doing poorly. And then I have zero relatives who have any connections to gas stations or to convenience stores, right? And so the overgeneralization hurts. And I think at the time, South Asians didn't really have anybody else to point to. So because there was that mixed, like at least it's representation, we took it, right? But I think that taken in the context of this time period where we have so many beautiful, multifaceted, layered expressions of what it means to be South Asian. There are South Asians in reality TV. There are South Asians being doctors. There are South Asians being writers and feminists and all kinds of different things that we just did not have then, right? Or Never Have I Ever becoming so popular. It was #1 on Netflix, you guys. I got so excited. So something with a South Asian female lead. Now that we have all those beautiful representations, now, yeah, of course, Apu looks silly and doesn't make any sense for the time, right? And what I loved about that is people actually figured that out for the most part. People were like, oh, yeah, the optics of this don't look so good anymore.
There was an interviewer who asked me if some particular series or maybe it was comic books should add character of particular marginalized group. And I said, certainly, but I think it's better if they add at least 2. Don't add 1 just to be adding 1. Add at least 2. Because with just 1, you're falling on stereotypes, or you're just like,
Yes.
That person has to represent everybody. They're afraid to give them flaws, or any flaw ends up representing everyone. It's like you need at least 2 before you start seeing better writing, greater variation in what's going on among these characters. Star Trek Discovery, in its 3rd season, added 2 non-binary actors, and there's a wealth of personality of what's going on with these characters and the actors themselves. In fact, one actually had not identified as non-binary before, but being involved in the role and feeling more free to express who they had always been, then made them feel free to use that term and express themselves that way.
One of my psychology professors in college would tell us something along those lines. During her I think it was a previous job or an internship, there was someone from a particular culture that was the only person of that culture in their office. And they were very quiet, very blunt. So everyone else in the office thought, oh, this is their culture. And they were very respectful of it and they didn't pay no mind. And then someone of the same culture came into the office and they were super friendly and extroverted and outgoing. And they were struggling with this dissonance. So they finally asked him. And he said, oh, no, he's just a jerk. And that stuck with me because it's so true, exactly what you're saying. If you have one representation, one character, then that becomes the template.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these problems, not all of them, but a lot of them can really be solved by just getting more writers in the room. But like having writers' rooms that like aren't just like a bunch of white dudes and like 3 white girls, right?
Oh, it boils down to your learned experience does not compare to my lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
People like the simplicity of a binary. People like the illusion of a binary. You can make this choice or that. It's getting into your heuristics, mental shortcuts, rule of thumb, categorizing people quickly. And it's important skill to learn early in life, categorization. And you look through stages of cognitive development and moral development. Those are important skills. And then you also have to learn the rules enough to later on understand why it's more complicated than that. And you might end up sounding like you did before you were categorizing some of these things, which can be okay. It is difficult trying to think outside your own skin or needing to think about other people in more complex ways. It's a hard thing to do.
Especially when thinking about other people and acting on it means giving up some of your own power.
Oh, yeah. Those with the power is like, why would they want to give that up?
Yeah.
Well, because some are decent human beings. So why do we rely on this billionaire dressed like a bat to save people in Gotham? Because he learned we need people with advantages that others don't have to pass laws, to make changes. We need some of them to do the right thing. We don't need to think of them in a binary way either. It's like, oh, they're billionaires. We can't trust them. Okay, maybe that stereotype is based on some darn good things, but we need people at every, I don't want to use the word level. That sounds like something is hierarchy above it, but in every walk of life, we need perspective taking. We need people to try to see the other side. And the ones who've been oppressed, it's real hard for them to feel as motivated to take the other side. They've been hearing the other side, having it shoved down their throats all the damn time. I say this as the cisgendered white middle-aged guy in the room.
But
I'm
you're
older than
one
Sam.
of his allies.
Yes, allies are important. Allies are crucial.
I was noticing a lot of vitriol on social media. And it really upset me because people were making assumptions and getting up in arms without even having the full story. So, and, you know, I identify as a skeptic. I want to know as much about a situation as I can before coming up with an opinion about a situation, knowing that opinion will change as more information comes about. I mean, that's science. It really spurred me to approach Travis and say, hey, this is a hot topic right now. It's rife with psychology. It's rife with an examination of human nature in general, no matter where you fall on the spectrum of your belief. If you believe that cancel culture really is a thing and people are being, you know, too sensitive, if you believe that it's a consequence culture and people are getting their just dues, you know, we're not here to tell you what to believe. We're here to remind you that it's always deeper than the 2-sentence headline for the article that you didn't click on because you were too busy scrolling down.
I want to go back to something I brought up earlier about why they might have announced, because it was 2 things in particular Billy wanted to bring up: Pepé Le Pew and Dr. Seuss, and then we got into Apu, and somebody online mentioned Potato Head. are there good reasons to announce that you're discontinuing, you're putting them out of print, rather than just quietly doing it? Are there reasons to tell people we are canceling these books, or we are putting these books out of print?
I
Did
think
you raise your hand like this was a class, Dr. Sam? Is that what just happened?
that is what just happened. Yeah. I got excited. I think there are good reasons, right? Like, other than like the cynical one that I brought up earlier, and that is that announcing something like that as a powerful, like, deep-rooted cultural institution announces that that's not okay, right? Like, Coca-Cola and Amazon and Nike and all these companies came out and they said Black Lives Matter. Do I think that Nike really cares about Black lives? Probably not. But like, by announcing that, they made the space much smaller for anybody that doesn't, right? And I think that if you can make the space smaller for people who are racist and bigoted, then that already has value.
It's a beautiful cycle, like you were saying, because the companies, the nihilistic point of view, the cynical, sardonic point of view, the companies are seeing that society is shifting a certain way. So they'll pander to that part of society which is going to buy their products. And then society will see that reinforced by the companies, and they'll shift more that way. So can it be both, cynical and optimistic? Yeah, they're hand in hand. I mean, that's human nature. We do what benefits us, and both sides are doing what benefits each other. And in the middle, you have people who have, right, yay! And in the middle, you have people who are trapped in that ever-closing chasm. And adaptability is the key to survival. Mm-hmm. And either they'll have to adapt to society's new norms based on the increasing voices of the various minorities that we have, or you're going to be left with such a staggering amount of dissonance. Who am I? Am I a racist? Am I a bigot? Am I a homophobe? Am I a transphobe? And for some people, they'll double down on it. There's a couple big names out there who doubled down on being misogynistic and transphobic because it's
and we will be talking about some of them real soon.
To balance out the non-cynical, non-skeptical view over here, right? In my heart of hearts, I would love to believe that corporations are realizing that there are issues that are so big in the world that they are being forced to take a stand. That silence means taking a stand in itself, right? That if you don't take a stand on certain issues that are so big, you are going to be put in whichever category. And do you want your image, your corporation, your personhood misaligned in a way that you didn't intend? And so to avoid that, taking a stand matters, right? And that is declaring a value. Yes, we value XYZ ideals, things, people, right? And so that is why I think taking a stand actually does matter, in addition to, yet again, capitalism, right? There is always that, but I think there's also something beyond that too.
There are plenty of things for which if you don't speak up, you are accepting that you're okay with either or any side being the one that wins. And that's not okay. Mm-hmm. Those are our final thoughts. If so, where can people find you online?
I am Dr. Harpreet Malla, and I am a registered psychologist. You can find me at Shanti, Orange County. You can also feel free to email me.
I'm Dr. Billy San Juan, therapist, writer, raconteur, and you can find me on Twitter at Billy_Cent.
And my name is Dr. Sam Koladesh, professor of theater, composition, and media studies, and you can find me at either UCSD or NYULA or CSUN.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us out there. Much appreciated. Bye.
Oh,
There's two other versions. One of this we're going to be talking about Harry Potter. One will be talking about we're about to say it ain't so, Joe and Joss and a whole lot of other people. So we'll do that for Wizard. We'll do Harry Potter fandom. How does it keep going on? That's a more positive way of looking at it.
I think that is perfect, right? Is what sustains the fandom amid whatever else has happened around it.